When we talk about infidelity, the air changes. The words themselves, betrayal, disloyalty, deceit, carry a weight that presses against the heart. We imagine broken vows, shattered trust, and the quiet ache that follows a love that has been touched by someone else. But what if the story we tell about why women cheat is incomplete? What if it's not simply about lust, or selfishness, or moral failure, but about something far more human, far more complicated? Cheating is often seen as a physical act, a moment of passion, or a collapse of moral boundaries, but in reality, for many women, it is something far deeper, an emotional rebellion against the dull ache of invisibility. It is rarely about sex alone. Rather, it is about feeling alive again, about tasting a spark of vitality that has long been missing. When a woman cheats, she often does not seek another body. She seeks a sensation, a renewal of energy, curiosity, and possibility that her current life has quietly drained away. She is not necessarily seeking someone else. She is searching for herself within someone else's gaze. The real reason behind such infidelity lies in unmet emotional needs, the longing to be noticed, understood, and desired beyond function or familiarity. Many women find themselves in marriages that, over time, become emotionally numb. They fulfill every role: partner, mother, caretaker, but their own emotional hunger remains unacknowledged. They crave connection, not just conversation. They want to feel that who they are matters beyond what they do for others. When that craving is ignored or dismissed, it turns into a quiet void that can consume even the most devoted heart. Desire, in its purest form, is not about the body, it's about being desired, being chosen, being alive in the eyes of another. For many women, the affair becomes a mirror reflecting a version of themselves that feels lost or forgotten. It reignites emotions that have long been suppressed: passion, curiosity, playfulness, and even a sense of personal power. This doesn't justify the betrayal, but it reveals the human need behind it. It shows that infidelity can sometimes be a desperate attempt to feel emotionally awake in a relationship that has gone emotionally dormant. When love turns into routine, affection into habit, and intimacy into obligation, a woman's inner world starts to shrink. She begins to wonder if this is all there is, if she will ever feel truly desired again, if she can reclaim that pulse of excitement that once made her feel alive. In those moments of emotional hunger, an affair may appear not as destruction but as rescue, a rescue from monotony, from being unseen, from a slow death of the self. The truth is, people cheat for reasons that are not simply physical but existential. They cheat not because they want new bodies but because they long for new feelings, new meanings, and the sense that their life still holds something extraordinary. Many women who cheat are not trying to escape their marriage but rather to rediscover a part of themselves that feels lost within it. Over time, relationships can create a kind of quiet erosion of individuality. The roles of wife, mother, or caregiver begin to overshadow the woman she once was, the one who laughed freely, took risks, and felt vibrantly alive. In long-term relationships, the responsibilities of daily life often take precedence over the inner life of desire and identity. The woman who once dreamed, created, and expressed herself may now feel buried beneath layers of expectation and obligation. When she steps outside the marriage, it is not always because she no longer loves her partner, it's because she no longer recognizes herself. The affair becomes a mirror, reflecting back to her the person she used to be, or the person she longs to become again. The experience of being desired by someone new can awaken parts of her that have been dormant for years. It's not just about physical attraction, it's about being seen, being heard, being felt as a woman with mystery and depth. Within the boundaries of marriage, familiarity can sometimes dull that sense of wonder. The relationship that once felt electric can become predictable, and the comfort of routine can turn into emotional confinement. The woman begins to crave novelty not for its thrill alone but for the reflection it offers, a version of herself that still holds passion, confidence, and spontaneity. The affair acts as a reminder that she is more than her duties, more than her commitments, more than the stability she has built. It's an attempt to reawaken her emotional and sensual identity, to feel a pulse that reminds her she is still capable of desire, creativity, and transformation. This pursuit is often less about the other man and more about the reawakening of the self. It is about feeling alive in a way that domestic life no longer provides. The paradox is that she may deeply value her marriage while still yearning for this rediscovery. She doesn't necessarily want to abandon her partner but to reclaim the lost parts of herself that have been silenced over time. The affair becomes a bridge between who she is and who she once was, or who she still wants to be. Beneath the betrayal lies a story not of escape but of return, a return to the self that once felt vivid, powerful, and free. Infidelity often grows in the spaces between what is said and what is left unspoken. Many marriages suffer not from conflict but from silence, from the gradual fading of curiosity, emotional expression, and meaningful communication. Over time, couples stop asking, "How do you feel?" and start assuming they already know. The routine of daily life begins to replace real emotional exchange. Love still exists, but it becomes quiet, muted, and sometimes mechanical. When a woman feels that her inner world no longer has a place within her relationship, she may begin to seek connection elsewhere. The affair becomes a language for emotions she cannot express at home, a way to feel heard without words, understood without explanation. In many relationships, emotional neglect is not deliberate, it's simply a byproduct of comfort and repetition. Partners forget that connection requires continual renewal, not just shared history. Conversations become transactional, revolving around chores, children, or responsibilities, and the emotional intimacy that once bound them begins to fade. The woman may feel unseen, not because her partner doesn't love her, but because he no longer looks at her with the same wonder or attention. The silence becomes a kind of emotional distance, a quiet ache that grows heavier with time. When she finally encounters someone who listens, who asks questions, who makes her feel emotionally visible again, it can awaken a sense of being understood that she's been missing for years. This doesn't mean she stopped loving her husband, rather, it means she stopped feeling known by him. The human heart doesn't thrive in indifference, it needs reflection, recognition, and emotional resonance. When these are absent, desire begins to wander. The affair may feel like a dialogue, a new space where her emotions, dreams, and thoughts are once again acknowledged. It's a form of communication born from emotional starvation. What she cannot say in her marriage, her loneliness, her longing, her frustration, finds expression in the secret language of another connection. Every betrayal carries an unspoken story, a message that something essential has been missing. Infidelity becomes a symptom of emotional silence, a response to the slow death of intimacy. When couples stop speaking from the heart, someone eventually tries to feel again through action rather than conversation. The affair, then, is not always about breaking promises but about breaking silence, the kind that quietly suffocates love until one person reaches for AI. At the core of every long-term relationship lies a profound human tension, the desire for both safety and excitement, for stability and passion, for commitment and freedom. These two forces exist in constant dialogue, and sometimes, in conflict. Stability offers comfort, predictability, and trust. It gives life structure and security. Passion, on the other hand, thrives on uncertainty, novelty, and risk. In marriage, many women find themselves caught between these opposing needs. They crave the security of being loved and chosen, yet they also yearn for the spark that makes them feel alive and unpredictable again. When that spark fades, they often begin to feel confined by the very stability they once desired. The affair, in such moments, becomes an attempt to reconcile these conflicting longings, to feel safe and free at the same time, to experience both intimacy and individuality. Over time, routine can begin to dull desire. The very familiarity that once built trust may start to suffocate mystery. Desire doesn't flourish in sameness, it needs distance, imagination, and the unknown. When a woman looks across the dinner table and sees a life that feels entirely mapped out, she may begin to miss the feeling of possibility. Not necessarily the wish for another partner, but the desire to feel that there is still something uncharted within herself. Passion often requires an element of risk, and when a relationship becomes too predictable, that sense of aliveness can fade. The affair introduces the forbidden, the uncertain, the unexpected, all elements that reignite her emotional and sensual curiosity. It's not always about disloyalty to her partner but about loyalty to a part of herself that refuses to live only in routine. This inner conflict between security and desire is not a flaw but a reflection of human complexity. We are wired to seek connection, yet also to seek adventure. When these needs go unbalanced, the scales tip toward longing. The woman who cheats may not be rejecting her marriage, she may be trying to breathe life back into her sense of wonder. In that moment, she's not escaping her husband but escaping the monotony that has replaced passion. The paradox is painful, she can deeply love her partner and still crave something that makes her feel untamed and alive. The affair then becomes a symbolic act of reclaiming that lost vitality, a way of reminding herself that within the structure of love, there must still be room for freedom, for imagination, and for the thrill of the unknown that once made love feel extraordinary. Understanding the real reason women cheat requires empathy more than judgment, because behind every betrayal lies a deeply human story. Society often rushes to condemn, to label, to simplify the act of infidelity into moral failure, but rarely does it pause to ask why. Empathy does not mean approval, it means curiosity, the willingness to look beneath the surface and recognize the emotional truths that drive people to make choices even they can't fully explain. When a woman cheats, it's easy to see only the damage, but harder to see the pain that preceded it. The emptiness, the loneliness, the longing to be seen and felt, the fatigue of carrying emotional weight in silence, these are not excuses, but they are context, and context is what transforms blame into understanding. Many women who stray are not acting out of cruelty or carelessness. Often, they are responding to an inner void that has gone unspoken for too long. They may have tried to communicate, to reconnect, to rekindle, but somewhere along the way, they began to feel invisible in their own story. Empathy allows us to ask not just what did she do, but what was she missing? When we listen through this lens, we begin to understand that infidelity is not always the end of love, it can be a distorted expression of yearning, a misguided attempt to feel alive, valued, or emotionally understood again. Without empathy, we only see betrayal. With empathy, we begin to see humanity. Empathy also helps dismantle the myths that surround women's desire. It acknowledges that women, too, have complex emotional and erotic needs that extend beyond the roles assigned to them. To understand her actions, we must see her not as a villain, but as a person navigating the conflict between duty and desire, love and longing. Judgment shuts down that exploration, while empathy opens the space for honesty, reflection, and even healing. It invites us to move from moral outrage to emotional awareness. When we approach infidelity with empathy, we don't justify it, we make it comprehensible. We see it as a symptom, not just a sin, as an expression of unmet needs, not simply betrayal. Empathy gives voice to the unspoken, the fear of fading, the hunger for connection, the grief of emotional neglect. It asks us to look not only at what happened, but at what was missing before it did, and in doing so, it transforms the story of infidelity from one of moral failure into one of emotional truth.